Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, so we've been talking about the ego and how it can edge God out and how it can be prevent us from being our true self or living in the true self we are. So then inevitably the question comes up is how do I go about being my true self?
Oh, and you want an answer to that.
Well,
Okay.
yeah.
All I ever suggestions, I suppose, but I think the first thing is just to identify when the ego is hot, is activated, is kind of trying to take over, and that's usually if I'm in some negative state. You name
Okay.
it. That's almost always ego generated. I will say always, but that might be an exception.
Okay.
So first of all, is that sense of awareness of yourself, of your state, and then the ability to manage that state a little bit. Often it's the momentum of what the ego's doing is just way too big, and you just need to take a nap or something like that to interrupt it.
So in a sense, when I say, how do I go about being my true self? It's like that's just another role play thing that we can fall into. That okay, how do I be my true? Well, you already are your true self, and that's the bottom line, right?
So it's more of a setting aside the things that block us from being our true selves, because that is our natural, normal state.
I know, but I'm always trying to figure out how to do something better.
I
So I
know.
want to better be my true self.
Yeah, right.
Well, you just are. That's the bottom line. And so the ego thing gets, hell, I need some way to get to that role or that, play that role of being my true self as opposed to my false other roles in my life.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle says something like, if I can be perfectly comfortable with being not really knowing what my true self is, then I'm just about there.
And I was thinking of, when, it's getting ego out of the way, but that happens sometimes quite unconsciously outside. So if I am just going totally engaged in something that just absorbs me.
That's that state called flow. And that is
Yeah.
a really egoless state. That's
Yeah.
just, you're just in your groove and
I'm forgetting I'm forgetting myself because I'm just lost in the moment, lost in experience. I remember having that experience a lot in counseling people. People would say, how could you sit and listen to people's problems all day without getting suicidal or something? Because I would be fascinated. Every family or person that came in front of me, and it wasn't like, okay, they're in this typology, they're in category 1 of 8 of problems. I never did that. I was always fascinated because it was about their unique self and their unique situation that they were dealing with and struggling with, and I would just get lost in that to the point. My problem with that is I tend to lose track of time when I'm in that kind of a counseling session with people, because I lose myself. It's not about how do I fix them. It's more you enter into the situation and I just get lost in it.
yeah, that's it. Being in the present moment, just showing up, being fully present to what's going on, and I think that sense of flow, and it's just ongoing, and that is this making peace too with the present. Rather than having that ego state that's always objecting or finding fault with the present moment, whatever it might be, whatever reality is. So there's, and when you talk, when you say how, it's sort of like just let it go.
Yeah,
And just be in the present moment, and there you are. And that is your true self.
And noticing when I have been doing that, and I don't notice that till afterwards, because it's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I just got lost in that situation, which means you had a biblical passage about that, getting lost and finding yourself.
Yeah, that Matthew 10:39. He
Yeah.
who finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life on my account will find it. So it's when we're in that ego state, finding our own life. This is who I am.
I gotta do this.
This is the defining moment, or this is this is what's really going on here, and all that kind of very critical thing, that ego state, then we're completely cut off from who we really are.
Which is just being. It's just being, and in some ways, I think we can talk about other things, but I think that's the most critical thing to me is, notice in retrospect the times when you were just more egoless and just caught in the moment and experiencing a moment of great joy, normally when we're dancing, we are just having a good time, not worrying about the steps. Unless I'm trying to get the Texas two-step right, then I'm caught back in my ego. But I mean, when it's stuff that we've just naturally done, it's just pure joy, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of how you know when you're being your true self, is that you are full of appreciation, joy, intensity, flow, all those kinds of positive things. That's what life is really like.
What it strikes me is that poem from D.H. Lawrence, as we live, we are transmitters of life. And when that's just happening, it just flows through us. That's kind of cool.
It's very cool. It's a wonderful state to be in. And, Jesus is the perfect example of that. It wasn't like he had a big major curriculum or whatever. He wasn't that kind of a rabbi. He would just show up and be present with his connection to God, and things got transformed.
And we can,
changed.
and it'd be great to talk about Jesus and what he was about, how he did that another time. But I think it's just so cool to think about, I can't not be myself. I am who I am. And God's grace toward me has not been in vain, is what Paul often said. It's just being, you can't not be yourself.
Yeah. You just get to enjoy it or not. Because you're even when I'm in this kind of sense of disconnection and ego-driven, I am still myself.
Yeah.
And God knows it and loves me for it.
Yeah, there you go.
I like that idea too. As often as I might get off in that hyper-ego state, there is no condemnation.
Yeah,
there is no condemnation for that. It's just you want to get in on what God has done for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's already there.
It's there.
Do you want to pray for us?
Yeah. Oh, Heavenly Father, what we want, we've already got. We don't need to seek it or search for it. Merely surrender to it. Thank you that this is how you've set it up, and this is how life is. Help us to, just receive it and pass it on to those around us. In the name of the Christ, amen.
Amen.
Bye.
Have a good one.